LSU football had an interesting 2024 season. After losing early to USC, the Tigers rebounded and had a legit shot at going to the college football playoff. Except they forgot to play football in the month of November, as towards the end of the season, they fell off and ultimately did not secure themselves a spot, and some people thought that Brian Kelly was pretty much done. In a last-ditch effort to probably save his job and his time in Baton Rouge, he decided to bring back a couple of big pieces from the 2024 team, plus he brought in the #1 transfer portal class in the country. Today's video, we're going to go ahead and take a look at that portal class. I'm going to go through each and every one of the guys that he brought in, talk about who they were, and how they can contribute to the team. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about this portal class. Okay, so the first guy we need to talk about, in my opinion, is quarterback Michael Van Buren. He's actually one of 4 3-star transfer recruits and is the most high profile of those 3. Coming out of high school, he ended up being a 4-star recruit from St. Francis Academy in Maryland, and Van Buren would actually get a chance to take over during the season as Blake Shapen would get hurt. Van Buren ended up playing in a couple of games and showed immense potential. He threw for nearly 1,900 yards and also had 11 touchdowns. He ended up having a good season and entered the transfer portal. Garrett Nussmeier's back in 2025, but I'm sure Van Buren will be gearing up to be the starter in 2026 and should have the inside track to that job. Another guy the Tigers got was wide receiver Destyn Hill. They'll need a couple guys to make plays, and hopefully Hill will finally live up to his status. Coming out of high school, he was the number 20 overall receiver, hailing from Edna Karr High School in New Orleans, but Hill has really not been able to get anything going so far during his time at Florida State. He ended up playing a bit in 2023, catching 6 passes, but did not play in 2024. Hill is still a big unknown, and hopefully will be able to develop at LSU, but still the jury is out on him. Hoping to help beef up the defensive line, LSU brought in Sydir Mitchell. Mitchell ended up coming out of the state of New Jersey, and was a pretty big deal. He was the number 51 defensive lineman in the country, and he ended up arriving at Texas, where he's played a little bit over the last 2 years. He without a doubt had a reserve role in the team, but will now transfer to LSU and will hopefully be developed and get an opportunity to play as an upperclassman. With Mason Taylor heading off to the NFL, LSU needed another tight end. That's where Bauer Sharp comes into play. After being a 0-star recruit coming out of high school, Sharp actually ended up blowing up while he was at Oklahoma, and in his last 3 years has been really solid. He combined for nearly 70 catches for about 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, and should get on the field a decent amount next season, if not becoming the starter for LSU. The first of 11 4-star transfers for the Tigers include Jakeem Jackson. After coming out of the state of Florida, Jackson was a 4-star recruit, as he played on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and was seen as a big-time athlete. Jackson would originally decide to arrive at Florida, where in the last 2 years he combined for about 11 tackles and 4 pass deflections. Obviously, he was not putting up All-American level numbers, but he decided to enter the transfer portal and was listed as a 4-star transfer. He'll now head over to LSU, where he will probably hope to play immediately for them. The next guy on the list is a player by the name of Jimari Butler. Coming out of Murphy High School in Mobile, Alabama, Butler was just a 3-star recruit in the class of 2020. He's been playing football for quite some time now. He would decide to commit to Nebraska, and this came after a solid high school career in which he had 60 tackles, 22 TFLs, and 14.5 sacks during his senior season. He was sort of going under the radar and would not play in 2020. Butler would end up playing in 2022, 2023, and 2024 though, with his best season coming in 2023 with a total of 34 tackles, 2 pass deflections, 5.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. Butler has a decent body of work and sort of follows the trend of teams trying to get experienced transfers who can help be a depth piece. I guess it does technically depend on the site, but Donovan Green is a 4-star transfer to some, but I guess is listed as a 3-star on 24/7 Sports. Coming out of Dickinson, Texas, Donovan Green was the number 5 tight end in his high school class, but unfortunately was never really able to get anything going while he was at Texas A&M. But the last time he stepped on the field for Texas A&M was quite some time ago. Back in 2022, he caught 22 passes for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns, and looked like he had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, he would not play the next 2 years, and is now transferring over to LSU, where he will probably try to compete with Bauer Sharp and whoever else is on the roster for that starting tight end spot. He has plenty of potential, but he's probably a bit rusty, as it has been a minute since he's been on the football field. Just like Jackson, Tamarcus Cooley was a 2-way player coming out of high school, as during his senior season, he ended up having 31 catches for 400 yards and 8 touchdowns, and also had 54 tackles and 2 interceptions. No one was throwing the ball his way, and Tamarcus Cooley would become a 3-star safety. He'd originally arrive at Maryland, where after having 4 tackles, he would transfer to NC State. He ended up breaking out in 2024 with 39 total tackles, 6 pass deflections, a sack, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 interceptions. This guy could pretty much do everything, and he's going to be a guy who I'm super excited to watch at LSU. I think he truly has NFL potential and can be one of those gadget defensive players that does a bit of everything. He's a huge pickup and is honestly underrated in my eyes. Getting another player to help out on the defensive line was key for LSU, as they ended up picking up Jack Pyburn. Coming out of the Bulls School in Jacksonville, Florida, Jack Pyburn had an incredible senior season. He had 109 tackles, 14 sacks, 32 TFLs, and a blocked field goal. Pyburn ended up becoming only a 3-star recruit though, and would choose the Gators over the Miami Hurricanes and a plethora of other offers. Pyburn would end up getting on the field a little bit in 2022 and 2023, but absolutely exploded in 2024 for the Gators. He became one of the better defensive linemen in the SEC, having 60 total tackles with a sack, a forced fumble, and an interception. Sure, you wish his sack numbers were a bit higher, but he was making plays and he had a lot of potential. It seemed like there was a little bit of a saga between him and Florida when he decided to enter the portal, but ultimately he would choose to go to LSU. He's going to be another one of those plug-and-play players who I think will step up and start right away for LSU, and I also think probably has NFL potential, but needs to have one more big-time season before that happens. The next 6 names, in my opinion, are the biggest guys that LSU brought in, and the first one we're going to talk about is Mansoor Delane. Coming out of high school, he was only a 3-star recruit, and was not exactly seen as the next big thing. While he did up having good numbers in high school, he was only a 3-star recruit from Archbishop Spalding, and would decide to go to Virginia Tech. Delane ended up playing immediately, showing he was one of the better young corners in college football, as he had 38 tackles and 8 pass deflections as a true freshman. In 2023, teams were not throwing the ball his way, but he still managed to have 54 tackles. In 2024, it was sort of the same old, but he still made a ton of plays. He once again had 54 total tackles, with 7 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. This guy is truly one of the best corners in college football, and he'll now be going over to LSU. This is a ginormous pickup for the Tigers, and he should be an anchor on their defense and then go play on Sunday. Football would end up running in the Moore family, but the guy we're going to talk about is Braelin Moore. Coming out of Freedom High School in Pennsylvania, he ended up having 10 sacks as a senior, but he wouldn't exactly use that while he was in college. The 3-star recruit ended up going over to Virginia Tech, where he's been a staple on the offensive line the last few years. Moore ended up becoming one of the better offensive linemen in the ACC, and just like his teammate Mansoor, he's now headed over to LSU. At nearly 6'4" and over 300 pounds, he will definitely be a guy who starts for LSU, as they lost a ton of their top offensive linemen, and he will need to step up right away. Honestly, I'm a little bit concerned about LSU's offensive line for 2025, so this guy is one of the more important transfers they brought in, and they need to hope that he lives up to the hype and ends up becoming a staple for them. You guys remember former Oklahoma star running back Nic Anderson, right? Yeah, so his little brother is actually probably going to be better than him, as coming out of Katy High School in Texas, Nic Anderson became one of the top players in his high school class, and this came after having 29 catches for 529 yards and 5 touchdowns as a senior, in an offense that pretty much only ran the ball. Anderson, though, was only listed as a 3-star recruit, and he would actually blow up in 2023. In his lone season with the Sooners, he caught 38 passes for 798 yards and 10 total touchdowns. Unfortunately, he would miss the entire 2024 season, and this was a huge death blow to the Sooners, who really struggled at the receiver spot this past year. Anderson would decide to enter the portal, and with LSU losing a couple of their main options, most specifically Kyron Lacey, Anderson will hope to be the number 1 guy in this year's offense, and he's someone who I think has NFL potential and will be super fun to watch. Alright, so a guy we've been hearing about for a couple of years now is Patrick Payton. Coming out of the famous Miami Northwestern High School, Patrick Payton was one of the top players in his high school class after having 17.5 sacks his final year in high school. Payton was obviously a 4-star recruit and actually came in as a linebacker for the Seminoles. Patrick would have a good season in his first year in 2022, finishing with 3 pass deflections, 31 tackles, and 5 sacks, but would have his breakout in 2023. He ended up having 43 tackles, 9 pass deflections, 7 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. That's why some thought he could become one of the better defensive linemen in the country this year, but Florida State had a disastrous season, as we all know, and Payton's stock fell off a little bit. He has since decided to enter the transfer portal and find a new school for his next season, and he ended up settling on LSU. LSU is a great place for him to go, and he's actually ranked so highly he was considered the number 6 overall player in this year's transfer portal class. He's super important to their season next year and will definitely be playing on Sundays. Okay, so we have another guy who was super important for them this year, and that is going to be offensive lineman Josh Thompson. As I said, they lose guys like Will Campbell and Emory Jones Jr., so LSU badly needs some good offensive line play next year and some guys to step up. Luckily, they ended up getting one of the best offensive linemen in this year's transfer portal, as that comes in Josh Thompson. Coming out of Fenton High School in Michigan, Thompson was only listed as a 3-star recruit and would decide to go over to Northwestern. Over these past few years, he was developed by the Wildcats coaching staff and will now be a plug-and-play starter this year. There's not much else to say about him, but he is a super important addition, and him and Braelin Moore are both going to have to step up. Okay, so the last guy on our list is going to be Barion Brown. I think this guy is one of the most important players that they brought in, and should be the most exciting if we're being honest here. Coming out of high school, Barion Brown was one of the top wide receivers in his class, and was both a speedster and a productive player. He played pretty much everywhere on both sides of the ball, playing quarterback, running back, receiver, DB, and even returning kicks. On3 listed him as a 5-star recruit, but the consensus was that he was a top 10 receiver, and 24/7 Sports had him listed as the number 68 overall receiver. He was definitely one of the biggest names to come out of Pearl-Con High School ever, and would decide to go to Kentucky. Alongside Dane Key, he ended up having a tremendous 3-year career at the Wildcats, in which he had 50 catches for 628 yards and 4 touchdowns as a freshman, 43 catches for 539 yards and 4 touchdowns as a sophomore, and then this past season, in a terrible offense, he still managed to catch 29 passes for 361 yards and 3 scores. Seeing the writing on the wall and how limited he would be in Kentucky's offensive system, Barion has decided to enter the portal to find a school that'll be better for his abilities. LSU has been a wide receiver factory over these last few seasons, and with them losing both CJ Daniels and Kyron Lacey, Brown should be a guy who steps up right away. Some LSU fans think Chris Hilton is the next big thing, but I'd say Barion Brown will be the top receiver on the team, and will likely blow up. He's listed as number 35 overall transfer, and he's a guy who I think will be electric in a Tiger uniform. So yeah, we talked about LSU's number 1 ranked portal class, and I went through each and every one of their additions, talked about who they were, and what I think their role will be. But what do you guys think? If you're an LSU fan, who was the most important transfer on the team? What team should I do a video like this for next? And what other topic should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video just like this for the Oregon Ducks. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.